Welcome to Sound Leader, a music industry podcast for professionals and fans alike. My name is Sophie. I am passionate about music, people, and ideas. After interviewing 20 of the top global music executives for my MBA dissertation about leadership, I thought, hey, why not turn this into a podcast? While there are many different leadership styles and approaches, for me, the very essence of leadership comes down to having a clear vision and values, thinking differently, and enacting change. So stay tuned to find out what executives in the music industry have to say and how they are leading the business. Today on Sound Leader, I have Thomas Emmanual, the co-founder of YellowHeart. YellowHeart is an NFT live event ticketing, art, and blockchain collectibles platform. They have been doing some pretty innovative things in the music industry, launching Kings of Leon's NFT album, When You See Yourself, and I was very excited to find out more about the people driving this. Thomas is no stranger to tech, getting into computers and coding at a young age, and even starting his first company at age 7. After school, he took a risk and launched his career in ticketing and barcodes before the age of smartphones. His love of music combined with his interest in cryptocurrency led him to create YellowHeart with Josh Katz. For those going, what's an NFT? NFTs are a type of cryptocurrency which can hold assets like music, tickets, and art, which operate on the blockchain. This means it is a transparent network where anyone can see the details of an NFT transaction. Thomas, welcome to the show. It's so great to have you as a guest.
Yeah, thank you, Sophie. Thank you for having me.
NFTs have been a big topic of conversation in the music industry over the last 6 months. Can you start by telling me a little bit more about what YellowHeart does and how you are leading in the music industry?
We're focused on releasing music as NFTs, but really facilitating more of a direct relationship between the artists and their fans, and allowing them to distribute directly to them, as well as kind of building communities. About 6 months ago, we released the first major album as an NFT. So that was Kings of Leon, When You See Yourself album. The NFT version was NFT Yourself. But that was our entry into releasing music as NFTs. To kind of back up a little bit, YellowHeart initially started off as doing ticketing on the blockchain, and we had built that and platform out the back end to kind of do event administration and along with ticketing, and then the mobile application for that, and we were in beta in February 2020, just before COVID came and all live events stopped. So during that period of time, Josh, the founder of YellowHeart, and myself, I'm the chief product officer and partner in the company. So we were watching the NFT market and kind of talking about our roadmap and how we may be able to reprioritize some things to kind of meet the market where it was at the time. And so that was when we started to develop, kind of explore the idea of more of a vertically integrated product offering. And what I mean by that is, we're activating within traditional fan bases who are non-crypto natives. And so there is such a steep learning curve, not only around even what an NFT is, but how you would go about buying one. And so we wanted to make sure that we could kind of guide people through that process.
I know a lot of people say it's a bit confusing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
They don't understand it, or they're trying to understand the process.
Mm-hmm. Especially when you're talking about new concepts. Even for me, I have a technical background, and it took me about 6 months to get my head around it. And when we did the original Kings of Leon launch, we used our site as kind of the main framework for how the overall release was going to happen, along with album redemptions. And we used OpenSea to do the minting. And so we developed smart contracts, deployed them with OpenSea, and because our platform was being developed. And so, the process at that time was, people actually had to go to set up an account with like a Coinbase, purchase Ethereum, download another wallet like MetaMask, transfer the Ethereum to MetaMask, come to our site, connect their wallet to OpenSea, purchase. And when you're transferring the Ethereum from like Coinbase to MetaMask, there's like gas fees, and so there was like multiple layers of that. So it was really interesting to see that not only the people that actually did go through that process, and even though they paid $100 on top of what they were paying for the album, with gas fees, they were still very excited, even somewhat frustrated, but excited to kind of join. And it was really great to see that Kings of Leon was a reason for them to do that, and that kind of validated what we were thinking in terms of onboarding and delivering value, through music as NFTs.
Did you go to Kings of Leon, or did Kings of Leon come to YellowHeart?
Josh, my partner and the CEO, he came from the music industry, so he has a pretty good network inside of there. So we've been talking to people over the years, even with the initial ticketing iteration. We were already in discussions with some of the biggest names in the world in music, and talking about how we can utilize NFTs to kind of help further their monetization of their intellectual property, and establishing better relationships with their supporters. And so we were talking with their manager for maybe 9 months, just about what to do, how to approach this, what's possible. And the Kings of Leon, their album was actually slated to go live, I believe, in June of 2020, and so they actually had to postpone the launch of that because of COVID as well. And so as we were continuing conversations, we said, okay, why don't we just actually release the album as a part of that, and support a charity, which at the time was the Live Nation Crew Nation, because there was no live events. So the crews that typically make a living off of live events were also kind of put into a compromised position. So all of that kind of coming together. We also we worked with Casey McGrath, who is their creative director, and in terms of kind of conceptualizing what the assets would be, and what the overall narrative behind them was. And so he had used some really interesting approaches to do the accompanying assets. But that was the initial release, and it really was a watershed moment for the industry. And it was the first time that all of a sudden we were getting a lot of feedback that a lot of conference rooms were talking about NFTs and what they are and what it means, and all of that as a result.
And then I see it was on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, and then they NFT'd the episode, which I thought was funny.
And tell me a little bit more about you. You now work in NFTs with YellowHeart, but you've got quite an interesting background with how you started in tech and led you to where you are now. Can you give me more information about that?
It was kind of interesting. I don't know, I feel like it was just such a natural thing for me. I gravitated towards computers and started programming when I was 8, and then quickly went more on the business side in my teenage years, and started my first technology firm right out of high school.
Did you feel a bit like an anomaly? I can't imagine most 8-year-olds being like, I want to get into tech and start a company at that age.
Yes. It was, so I would spend the summer at my grandmother's, and she actually had one of these computers that you'd plug into your television, and you would turn it on, and it would only be a green screen with a blinking cursor. So and it had like this really thick book. So you actually had to, like, if you wanted to do something with it, you actually had to like go through it. And at the time I didn't know what I was doing, but I was just like copying what was in the book, on the keyboard to the screen. And I would spend like an evening doing that, press enter, and all of a sudden it would be like a smiley face would be painted on the screen. And I was like, oh, that's cool. So it was simplistic programming, but that was kind of, I was learning certain patterns and what a loop was, and things like that. So that was kind of what got me started in along that path. And so when I came back and I told my mom I wanted a computer, and she I had saved up, and I got one for Christmas, and it was the same kind of thing. I think it was a Tandy at the time, and so I was kind of interested in that, and then when I was just throughout my teenage years, I was really interested in music overall, and started going to certain electronic events that were more underground. At the time I was in Detroit, that's where I grew up. And so there was this kind of interesting culture that was the mix of this kind of music, this electronic music that was underground, but it was also a very heart-centered culture. So going to these like warehouses and meeting people that kind of drove from two states, and there was this kind of formation of this culture around like music and technology that was being used to make music, and so it was really great, to be a part of that. But so with that, it was kind of like just kind of coming up in technology in that kind of culture, and so my closest friend at the time, his name was Jason. He had his father had actually given him money to start a business, and so it was right across the street from our high school, and so we would build computers and do networking for homes and small businesses. And so that's when I started to get into like more like kind of web programming and understanding, what that was. And so I was like, 15 at the time, turning 16. And so sometimes I would skip school to go, run the business. And
Were you like, I don't need school. I've got a different career path.
but what was cool was like, so we had like this, core group of friends and people that were into technology as much as we were. And but one day I showed up and the front of the business, which was all windows, was like blacked out, and it was just like a list of services. And so I didn't know if we were selling computers or car audio anymore. And so when I walked in, it started to kind of turn more into like, not a hacker hangout, but more of that kind of social thing. So I focused back on school, and immediately upon graduating, I started my first technology firm, and I worked with the vice president of America Online, Latino. So he was tasked with bringing America Online to the Latin community. The CTO of Visteon, which was a technology division of Ford. And they had some .com ideas, and so I was working with them on kind of mapping out the various aspects and actually building them. And so after that, I had the idea of putting barcodes on mobile phones, barcoded tickets. And so in 2002, I started the first process of barcoded ticketing on mobile devices.
But wait a sec, 2002, we didn't have smartphones yet.
No, this was green screen phones, and like the mobile web it was like this WAP protocol, which was like a wireless application protocol, and it was each device handled it very differently and had certain limitations, and so in order to get a viable system, there were so many like workarounds and nuances that had to be developed just to have a minimum kind of viable user experience. And I remember I had gotten like the first, prototype done, and I had ordered a barcode reader, and I was so excited. It showed up, and I'm like, Mom, I'm gonna go make history. I'm gonna go scan like the first barcoded ticket from a phone, and it didn't work. And so then I'm like, okay, why is this not working? And so I found out that the laser, like when it hit the screen, it would actually like break the laser up, so it couldn't, return in order to read the scanner. So I was working with like Symbol and trying to understand like what technology was available, and so it came out that in the mailing industry they were using 2D barcodes, and the two-dimensional barcode scanner would take a picture like a camera and then find the barcode in the scanner, and so that was when I realized, okay, that's the scanner that would be capable of scanning this, because it didn't matter what the surface was. Okay, so we ended up launching in the movie industry, and so we rolled it out initially at this amazing theater chain called Imagine Theaters, and so we were able to validate, and we had, but at the time it was such a foreign concept, so people were like, use my phone for what?
Which is so funny when you think of now in 2021 where we're at with our phones.
I remember when I was initially raising capital, and I would tell them what I was trying to do, and they would say people are only going to use their phones for like talking and text. That's it. And so I was like, no, I think there's a lot more to hear, more to this. But we at the time it was this. How to groom consumer behavior, how to educate people on what this was, how to go about it. So kind of being a part of that, but dealing with trying to push that a little bit forward and create a different way of people looking at the device. So we had like street teams at the theaters on the weekends, and pre-show kind of videos that would play, to help create the awareness and education. But we ended up rolling that out, including at some of Mark Cuban's movie theaters, his independent movie theater chain, Landmark. So after that, I was on a board in 2015 with various business leaders, including the vice president of product development for General Electric. And so we were evaluating different settlement technology at the time for some new services getting ready to be. And I came across blockchain. And what really impacted me about it was what I saw as possibilities. I saw that there were new models and new possibilities coming forward around this technology. And so I started to kind of evaluate it and look at it and think about how it could be applied and what new models could be created. And in 2017, I decided to kind of go all in. That's my personal and professional interests aligned, and so I started to build in blockchain, and my focus was always on NFTs. So I've done some trading and I've invested in some projects that I was interested in, but really my focus in building was always around NFTs, because I saw NFTs as where applications meet the blockchain in a way where you can actually leverage what the blockchain can provide in a non-currency way. And so 2 years later, I had met Josh. And so we started building together. And so it was kind of interesting because, in one respect, I started off with mobile ticketing as with the first mobile ticketing platform, and then here's Josh, who had the idea of putting tickets on the blockchain, coming together and working on this, and then I kind of shared a little bit about the initial iteration and how we've pivoted since.
For YellowHeart, what's your vision for the business?
Really, it is about the direct access from artists and their supporters, and so we're starting off now with music-based NFTs, and so that is either releasing music as NFTs or music artists releasing NFTs. So we've recently launched a DAO with Maroon 5. We're launching Torrigato, who is Kat Graham's recent incarnation in music, and so she's doing an NFT only release. But really, it's to us, it's about releasing this direct from the artist to the fan and building communities of value through token holding and token holders. And so right now, we've just finished getting a lot of the core infrastructure in place, and so we have a wallet that you can download on your desktop. The mobile version's coming out in September, but where you can actually use a credit card to buy these assets. So whether you're buying a ticket, an album, or a piece of art, you can download the wallet, sign up for an account, and just purchase the asset with your credit card. So that was like one example of wanting to make that transition as easy as possible for somebody to kind of join the space or acquire these assets. And so now we're getting more into the differentiation. So we have a deal with Burnley, the football club out of the UK, and so we're activating with their women's team first, and then we're doing ticketing at the stadium for the men's team. And so we're in kind of exploration in terms of how we want to roll this out and what phases we want to do it in and what that looks like. So ticketing is very much a core of what we do, but it's it's really still a part of this notion of allowing artists to go direct to their fans, whether it is through music, whether it's through art, through tickets, and then giving them like a dashboard and an ability to see. So this person was at my one of my first shows, and they have continued to support me throughout my career. How can you identify who was there at one of your first shows? Who can you identify that's gone to every at least one show of every tour you've done, or maybe that's gone to every show on the current tour, right? And when you identify that and you can engage with them more specifically, now you're talking about this community of value that gives visibility for artists, into that fan base, and then to interact with them directly.
Do you find the music industry innovative?
So it's interesting because I would say the fundamental aspect of the music industry hasn't changed all that much. I would say that there are technology companies that have kind of innovated around how music is delivered and monetized. and therefore consumed. And so, I would say, back when Napster was, kind of coming out and creating this, shareability of music, and I think Apple was the first one to come out with like 99-cent songs, which was, kind of an innovation. So I don't know that it came from the music industry per se, but obviously it was a part of it. So we've seen innovations like that, then going to what is the dominant kind of factor at the moment, which are streaming services, DSPs, and it makes it easy for the consumer to have access to entire libraries, kind of all you can eat. But the challenge with that is that a lot of artists can't make a living off of that, because the majority of that revenue goes to people that are having many millions and tens of millions of streams are getting the lion's share of the money. So I think it's interesting when you talk about the music industry itself innovating. I would say the music industry is I don't know, perhaps allowing other companies to innovate around, and then kind of acquiring or just moving more in certain directions, and that's kind of what we're doing. So even though we talk about this being more direct between the fan and the artist, what we're doing is laying infrastructure, and that kind of ground new possibilities and new ways of going about it, that may kind of align things in a better way. But still allow for everybody to participate. And we'll kind of maybe talk about what that looks like in a little while.
What is the future? Where do you see the music business in the next 5 years, and how does NFTs fit into that?
Yeah, I'm really excited about where things can go. I think that with the tokenization, right, of not only rights, and that's kind of in our roadmap, as well, as we're starting to publish music as NFTs, but the ability to like tokenize not only the rights to music, the music itself, and creating these smart contracts that serve as the like foundation for these things to take place. But then it allows for other people to kind of build on top of that. So I can say, okay, here's somebody, like we did golden tickets for Kings of Leon, which gave somebody like a golden ticket holder 4 tickets to a show for one per tour, transportation to and from, backstage access, etc., for life, right? So these assets are now yours, and for as long as the band is touring.
So every tour in the future, someone, if they have that NFT, the band would know about it and they could rock up to a tour and they would get the full package every time.
They have to redeem it 30 days before the concert they want to go to. But yeah, so they would literally, we put them directly in contact with the band and the band's manager, and so now they can literally, say, I want to go to this show, and they'll say, here's, address, and they get picked up. Them and 3 of their friends, so 4 people total, and they also get 4 of everything from the merch booth that gets put into bags in the back of the car. So like when you get dropped back off of your house, they bring in all the bags of merch. And that's something that goes on in perpetuity. And so now, and it's not just for the original owner. That owner can then sell or do other things, with that asset, where whoever holds the asset at the time can redeem. And that's kind of what I was using to illustrate the point of innovation, and how somebody else, not YellowHeart, not Kings of Leon, can say, you know what, there's an opportunity here, because somebody may want to use that, and let's say they could use it for a number of years, and now they want to allow somebody else to use it. Somebody could create independently an opportunity, so to say, if they have that token, we're going to lock it in a smart contract to give somebody else like the ability to rent it, let's say. So somebody else could actually develop the technology that enables another person to redeem it for one tour, and then it gets returned back to the original person, right? The original owner. So I see, just using that as an example, but the way that this is more of an open, trustless network, that I think is going to fuel a lot of innovation. And so we're just kind of focused on what we're doing and creating some of the infrastructure and onboarding the right kind of key stakeholders, into the industry. But really, once that groundwork is put in place, I think we're going to see a lot of innovation happening, and not just by companies, but by all kinds of creative thinkers and artists themselves. And so I really think that we're kind of booting up what the next iteration of possibilities are within this space. And I think that things are going to be radically different in 5 years from rights.
So the future's bright.
The future is very bright, yes.
For the deep dive, you chose the topic of value extraction versus value creation in the music industry. Value extraction, meaning the purpose of a firm or a business is to maximize shareholder value, versus value creation, where the firm seeks to create value for their customers as the end goal. Why did you choose this topic?
You kind of touched on it a little bit. I think today, when we think about how businesses are set up, at least in the U.S., but I think the same model has kind of been adopted in most places around the world, and that is this idea of shareholder value, right? And so to me, it's kind of the physics of Wall Street that we're talking about and how that function. And because of the idea of shareholder value creation is typically about margin, and so then everything kind of steers to that, and that's where you get some of the value extractive kind of mentalities or practices, is in doing whatever it takes in order to make that happen, in order to achieve that goal. And I think what we're seeing now is this fundamental shift. I mean, one, on a cultural level, where people are realizing the impact that certain things may have, whether it is on a societal or environmental basis, but really how when you think about these value chains, everybody that is participating in them is trying to kind of get as much of the piece as they can. To kind of bring blockchain into it a little bit is we can engineer these incentive structures much more specifically. And so when you think about traditional models, whether it is like, we'll stay within the realm of music, but artists only see 10% of the total revenue that they create. On one hand, artists just kind of want to make music, let's say that the majority of them, and they're happy to kind of work with others that will deal with other sides of the business. But when you get into the value creation around that and what they're compensated for in doing that, I think that's where we're getting into. With NFTs, we're focusing on, let's say with music NFTs, so like Kings of Leon, where not only was there an initial sale, but each subsequent sale, there is a royalty that gets paid back to the artist, right? And so within ticketing, similar, right? So think about value extraction within the value chain of live music, and you have the artists that are creating the music, that are creating the performance, the show, people that are involved in putting these things on, from production companies, even the underwriters like Live Nation, of the world, et cetera. All of these people are on the side of creating the value and creating that experience. And so when you have tickets go on sale and you have scalpers that come in and buy up all the inventory and then are selling them on secondary markets for 3 times the face value, that's a pure value extractive practice, right? And so this is a great example of value extraction and how it's just taking from, I would say the only value that it contributes is in de-risking events, because they are buying up a lot of inventory, but that's pretty much it. And I see the opportunity to actually create an ecosystem that is inclusive. And if they're interested in making money through de-risking events, maybe they can do that, but at a different level, right? So they can be making returns, but without having to do so and charging 3 times the face value, so that the fans are having to pay more, and all of the aspects with that. So that's where, with music and tickets as NFTs, these NFTs can have certain rules. So within our ticketing platform, we can say, okay, if this ticket is being offered, if you have a community token, or you have previous tickets that you've purchased and redeemed for an artist, the probability that you are a fan versus a scalper is much higher, right? Because scalpers usually want to buy this and then sell it to somebody else. So in terms of like validating fan behavior, I think that there's a lot of interesting things where then that translates to like preferred access to purchasing tickets. But then the tickets themselves can only be resold for a certain amount above face value. So the artist can kind of set parameters that these smart tickets have to operate by. And that is because of what rules are incorporated into the smart contracts. And so along with that, there is a percentage that goes back to the artist and goes back to some of the stakeholders who are a part of creating that value. And so this is the first time that these mechanics are possible. So that's kind of just an example of the value creation, value extraction, and how NFT ticketing can address that.
YellowHeart, I know, seeks to empower fans and artists to have more ownership over their community than ever before. In this context, are other stakeholders as important, or is it just the artist and fan? Should other stakeholders be worried? The agents, the promoters, anyone else really in the chain?
It's a good question, and I think there is somewhat of an emphasis within blockchain to kind of remove intermediaries, where I really see it as more of kind of restructuring that value chain, so that you can more specifically understand the value that a particular party or person is creating, and rewarding them based on that, right? So based on the value that they're creating. So I think that really what we're going to see is the way that these parties contribute value, and in this kind of new reconfiguration is going to be slightly different. But I definitely see like the role of curation, the role of promotion, as very necessary in order for music to propagate, right? So I see opportunities where it's still inclusive, but just the rules and how they go about it may be slightly different.
And why do you feel it's better to measure value with NFTs? And how does NFT then make the music more valuable? Does it?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting from the sense of like measuring value through NFTs. So when you think about, there is an initial sale, and that initial sale can be set at a particular price, and that's kind of done by the artist, let's say, and then a fan will purchase it. And so we've seen this with every release that we've done, but especially. With pretty much everyone that we've done. But so a fan will be able to buy, or a collector, and will be able to buy an asset at that fixed price. Once those assets then move on to secondary markets, the pricing is determined by the market, right? And so now you have
by the demand.
Yeah, exactly. So you're able to get market-based pricing for these assets. And even when you think about a ticket, you have like the use of the ticket. So we're looking at them much different than just a receipt of a transaction. A lot of times you buy a ticket and they give you like a receipt for that transaction that is good for the rights to a seat, right, or entry into a venue. Where with NFT tickets, we see this as much more long tail like engagements, and there's ways and opportunities to engage in different ways through the token around content and other things. But specifically, so if I buy a ticket for $50 and I go to this show and it becomes like this historic moment, the NFT itself, after I've redeemed it for the show, now becomes a collectible. And depending on a lot of artists that we're working with are collaborating with visual artists to create the NFTs, and so they become works of art themselves. And so even after the show, the NFT may become more valuable than the face value of the ticket initially.
Do you feel value extraction, I mean, it's known for having a short-termism point of view against shareholder value. What do you see the long-term goal is of value creation for an artist or musician trying to build a career in the music industry?
I think that, and this is kind of what we're exploring and looking at, is when you start talking about the frame of the artist and the supporter, is being able for the artist to identify and start building a community of value around them that ultimately will lead them to have fans stake or finance their projects directly, right? So if you're a fan of an artist, that artist wants to produce a new album, and they can actually, tell the fan base what they're looking for, tell their supporters what they're looking for, and be able to get the financing to make that happen, all the way up to financing a tour, right? So I see the ability for artists to build communities of value and to engage with those communities of value directly in bringing forth the art and the experiences that they want.
And do you feel NFTs and crypto gets a bad rap? Do you think some people are a little kind of nervous or don't understand it enough, or would be worried to go that route of NFTs?
I think that it is something that's new, and I think like earlier on, like earlier adopters, some of the things that kind of initially broke into the mainstream was made people more wary of it in a way. But I think that the more that people understand it, the more that goes away, right? Like I haven't met anybody that has fully understood blockchain and its capabilities, and we're still hung up on just that point, right? Because I think it's just the case with anything that can be a store of value, can be exchanged and for any purpose. But blockchain and those kind of technologies are actually even more transparent, and so I think that it's something that we're still very, very early on, but similar to the internet, I think that it's unmistakable in terms of that this is a heavy contender for what is to come in a lot of aspects of our lives, and so it's going to be a process of not only adoption, but people that are kind of leading the way, doing things in more intentional ways, and whether it is regulation or kind of how this fits into the bigger sense as this becomes more vibrant, I think is yet to be determined.
What is your favorite artist of all time?
I would say, for me, I'm probably biased. My father, stepfather, him and my mother got married when I was really young. He's kind of been the soundtrack to my life. So I would say, so Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheels. Aside from that, I don't get hung up on any genres, any decades. I really do appreciate all kinds of music.
What song or album got you through 2020?
Let me just pull up my Spotify. In a lot of ways, there was this podcast called Laut and Louisa from Germany, and it was a certain kind of electronic music that was a little bit slower paced, had like international music and a lot of the things that I appreciate about music. And so I was definitely had them on heavy rotation.
What is the best live concert you've seen?
Probably Grateful Dead. Grateful Dead and Phish both. I really appreciate the aspect of live music in the sense of jam-based performances. I feel like it's kind of a very pure sense of music and just how people come together and kind of get in sync in that way, and it's a beautiful thing to watch. I'd say that, or very early on in going to some of the warehouse parties and the magic that was kind of surrounding that.
Nostalgia is a funny thing. I mean, when you think back of like your first events you went to, they're probably most people's favorites because it was the first time you experienced it and it feels so new and fresh.
Yeah, exactly. Very true.
What song do you have on repeat right now? And you can consult your Spotify algorithm if you want.
Let's see. It changes up every day. I would say, like literally, most days I wake up with a song in my head, and that's the tone.
What song was in your head today?
Today it was. Hold on one second. It was "Have You Ever Seen the Rain" by Creedence Clearwater Revival.
That's a good song. Nothing wrong with that. Do you have a favorite up-and-coming new artist? We like to plug new music here, so we can share some links after. Favorite new artist?
I'm very interested in Torrigato, the album that's coming out with her. Black Coffee, who's not necessarily a new artist, but he's been making waves.
South African local, yeah. And what is one song you'd wish you'd written?
It would probably be Imagine.
Agree, I'm a big Beatles and John Lennon fan. Beautiful song. And that brings us to the end of this podcast. I really enjoyed hearing about NFTs in the music industry, and I'm sure we're going to be hearing a lot more from YellowHeart.
Really appreciate you, kind of reaching out and doing this, and I think it's an interesting stage that we're in right now, where I think even in the next 6 months to a year, things are going to look much different. So I hope to, stay in contact and continuing the conversation with you.
I am very interested to see where NFTs go within the music industry. Thomas sees the possibilities of NFTs to build a community of value through token holders, creating a deeper connection between the artist and fan. Rather than being a disruptor, I see NFTs helping to restructure the value chain and offer transparency. I think the future is bright. A big thank you to Human Bean Juice for the music and STFD for the mixing. For upcoming episodes and news, please follow me on Soundleader Podcast or soundleader.buzzsprout.com. And until next time, take care.